Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Worlds Unwritten. My name is Jeriko. Today, we are going to be continuing our deep dive series into the remastered classes of Player Core 2, starting today off with the Champion. The third of the 8 classes we're going to be going over the Divine Warrior, following the edicts and anathema of their deity and their cause, while receiving additional blessings in order to protect their allies and punish their foes. The Champion is a fantastic class, having long been really one of the standout tanking classes, whether you are previously going down the tenets of evil, most of which focused on dealing additional damage to your enemies, or the previous tenets of good, most of which focused on protecting your allies. With the remaster, we have, of course, completely gotten rid of the alignment system, and there was a need for an entire semi rework of how the champion worked because of that. No longer are your causes tied to the good and evil alignments. Instead, we have built it all around the concept of sanctification, which was brought about with Player Core 1 and the idea of holy versus unholy, or neither, depending on your preference. So, taking a look at Champion, it's a fantastic class. It always has been. I don't really think there's anything that needed buffing or nerfing in it. It just needed those adjustments to make it fit in with the new rule setup. And I think they've done a fantastic job. I'll just come right out and say it. Not only have they kept everything how it worked pretty much without making anything too worse, they have also given us a brand new cause to work with as well. So people who have built every champion they possibly could now have even more toys to play with. So let's get into it. Most of it is going to remain the same. You choose a deity, you will follow their edicts and anathema. The deific weapon feature has been buffed slightly. You still get a damage die increase on unarmed attacks and simple weapons belonging to your deity, but the additional wording now makes it that any advanced weapon that is your deity's favored weapon is treated as martial for the purposes of you. So you aren't going to struggle with your weapon proficiency no matter what sort of strange weapon or deity you worship, which will be really, really nice and allow your champions to branch out a bit more now. They've also codified. Previously, a lot of abilities gave you a 15-foot aura around you, and your champion's reaction would also work within 15 feet of you. They have bundled all of that together. You now have a champion's aura that lasts for 15 feet around you in an emanation that helps out with the terminology. It simplifies things. It should make reading and understanding the class much, much easier for a whole lot of people. You now have 3 different devotion spell choices. Previously, there was Lay on Hands and Touch of Corruption based off of if you were tenets of good or evil. Now, those are still the same, though Touch of Corruption has been renamed to Touch of the Void, and you can choose these based off of the divine font of your deity. So if your deity has a heal font, you could choose Lay on Hands. If they have a harm font, you could choose Touch of Corruption. If you don't want either of those, you can take the new spell, Shields of the Spirit. This is a 1-action focus spell that you would use if you are wielding a shield, and for the cost of it, it automatically raises it and grants a +1 status bonus to AC to all of your allies who are within your champion's aura. It is then going to deal 1d4 spirit damage to any enemy that attacks one of your allies in the aura. So it's a really nice way for those champions who are focused on protecting their team. Not just are you going to have reactions to reduce the damage dealt to your allies, but you can give them a bonus to their AC and deal some automatic damage to your opponent if they deign to attack the people you are protecting. I think it's a fantastic spell, a fantastic addition, and a great middle ground for if you do not wish to focus on the holy or unholy aspects of your character. The biggest change we get now is that Divine Ally has been adjusted. These were previously Blade Ally, Shield Ally, and Steed Ally that you would choose one of and it would grow alongside you. You could take specific feats for it. Now, these are your blessings of the devoted. You can choose one of the three just the same, and most of them operate at least relatively similarly. The Blessed Armament is the replacement of the Blade Ally, and it works the exact same. However, instead of you having specific rune choices based off of if you follow the tenets of good or evil, all of those runes are now available to you regardless of your cause. Blessed Shield replaces the Shield Ally and is a very slight nerf to what it was previously. Previously, with the Shield Ally, you got a small buff to hardness and doubled your hit points in Broken Threshold, and this would stack on top of any reinforcing runes you got, ignoring the maximums to them, which made you able to get the highest possible hardness and hit points on a shield. The Blessed Shield now automatically applies a maximum scaled reinforcing rune to your shield. So you start with a minor, you will automatically get the lesser version, then the greater, all the way up to the supreme reinforcing rune at max level. This is still pretty nice. Getting them for free is going to save you money to focus on whatever other equipment you would like. You're also not going to have to worry about finding a town. So if you are out adventuring somewhere that doesn't really have settlements and shops for a period of time, you're not going to have to worry about your shields not scaling up with you anymore. I think that's a really nice benefit if it is slightly weaker than what we had previously. And it does have a little bit of extra wording on it. If you purchase and apply a reinforcing rune that matches the same type you're automatically getting, it does improve the hardness by 1. I don't think this is really huge, and you're probably not going to get much benefit out of it or really focus on it, but if you've got the extra cash sitting around, you don't have anything else you want to buy with it, I don't think there's anything wrong buying a reinforcing rune for that +1 hardness still. Last but not least is the change to Steed Ally. This is the one that has been completely reworked. Previously, Steed Ally simply gave you a young animal companion that you could use as a mount. That has been turned into a feat and then follows its feat progression normally. Instead, we now have a blessing that inherently grants you a +5 foot status bonus to your speed and gives that to any creature you are mounted on. Additionally, when an ally who is within your aura triggers an enemy reaction via movement, say triggering a reactive strike, they get a +2 status bonus to all defenses against the reaction. So that'll also boost their saving throws and DCs that matter. It's fantastic. I think this is a wonderful choice, and I'm really excited to see what sort of builds people are going to create with that adjustment to your speed and focused on protecting the movement of your allies. Really just getting a +2 status bonus to all of your allies' AC against reactive strike if they're near you, that's going to make your spellcasters a bit more confident, not having to worry nearly as much potentially about getting crit when they choose to cast a spell, although that is via movement, so it would still trigger on casting a spell. Still a good buff, though, in what it's going to give you. At 9th level, your Divine Smite has been just renamed to Relentless Reaction, but it's going to operate pretty much the exact same. And there is a very minor change to Hero's Defiance at 19th level, the focus spell that allows you to stand back up if you hit 0 hit points or potentially not hit 0 hit points. Previously, it healed 10d4 plus 20. This averaged out to 45 hit points. It has been changed to 10d4 plus 20. It has been changed to 6d8 plus 20, which averages out slightly higher at 47 instead of 45. It's not really a major change. Doesn't really do much for you, but I just thought it was something fun to note. Now, let's take a look at our causes. Previously, we had 6, 3 for good alignments, 3 for evil alignments. We have 7 now, 2 of which require the Holy Sanctification, 2 require the unholy sanctification, and the remaining 3 don't have a requirement. You can either be unsanctified, holy, or unholy to take them. 6 of them are basically the exact same as they were previously, with some slight wording changes here and there to make them slightly better or change up how they work just a tad bit. It's all pretty much the same. Desecration and Iniquity are the 2 unholy options. These are the remade versions of the Desecrator and Anti-Paladin options for Champion, and really are just about the exact same when how they're going to be. There was a slight modification to Desecration, I believe. Your Relentless Reaction, previously Divine Smite, now triggers if your Charisma modifier is a +3 or greater. Previously, it was only triggering, or it triggered if your Charisma was a +2 or higher. I don't think this is going to matter. Your modifier should be a +3 no matter what by this point, since Charisma really is your second best skill typically for a champion. I just found it funny that they changed that number slightly. Your 2 holy options, well, let's get to holy in a minute. Let's actually start with the non-holy, non-unholy ones. Your 3 choices that you can take whenever are justice, liberation, and obedience for your causes. Justice being the replacement for paladin, liberation being the replacement for liberator, and obedience being the replacement for tyrant. These are all going to be pretty much the exact same. Obedience has a very minor change to Iron Command, where you can only choose Spirit as the damage type. You can no longer choose to do Spirit or Void damage. I don't think that's really a big issue, but it is just a little thing to note. Liberation has a slight benefit to your liberating step. It now applies if the ally is restrained as well, not just if they're grabbed. Slight little wording update that just made it slightly better. And your exalted reaction has been updated a little bit. The targeted ally can attempt to break free for an effect and still allow all other allies and yourself to step. Previously, it said only allowed you and your allies to step if the ally did not attempt to break free. I think this is a fantastic change. I'm not really sure why that restriction was there in the first place. This is just really, really nice. And our 2 holy causes. First is Redemption. This is the final of the ones we previously had. This is the remade version of the Redeemer. It's pretty much the exact same. I always liked how Glimpse of Redemption worked. The wording has been adjusted to be slightly more specific. The 2 options have names now, Repent and Refuse, just to help it be referenced with further wording down the line. The big money, though, the one we all care about, the new cause, the holy cause of grandeur. A fantastic cause that really operates around you, showcasing kind of just how much better than everyone else you are, taking on a grand countenance and looking down on others as they are forced to bask in your splendor. Fantastic ability, has its own set of new edicts and anathema that don't apply to anything in the remaster, and its reaction, its champion's reaction, is called Flash of Grandeur. It gives resistance to an ally damaged by an enemy when both are within your champion's aura, and applies the effects of Revealing Light to the attacker. This is a 2nd level or 2nd rank spell that dazzles the target, removes any concealment they had, and makes them concealed if they were invisible. This is really, really nice. On top of just dazzling them for a round, it has a fun little benefit you won't get to use super frequently, but it will render any 4th rank invisibilities that are cast on your enemies useless. They won't be able to remain invisible after stabbing someone. They will, at the very least, just be concealed. That's a really nice little benefit. I think this is a fantastic champion's reaction, a fun twist on the other options that exist, granting the resistance still, but also giving you very fun option in just dazzling the enemy. There's also some phenomenal abilities and feats you can take with Grandeur later that really send that through the moon. Your Relentless Reaction causes the attacker to take persistent spirit damage and prevents it from recovering from the spirit damage while it is affected by revealing light. So, most likely for at least one round, it will not be able to recover and will be forced to take the spirit damage twice. It's pretty nice. It's just about on par with all of the other relentless reactions. None of them are too terribly amazing. The vast majority of them are focused on adding in this little bit of extra persistent spirit damage. So I think it's just fine. I don't have any problem with it. But your exalted reaction is pretty nice. It applies revealing light's effects to all other enemies in your aura. And this is done without a save. That is one of the nice things. Revealing light normally requires a save to determine how long the effect lasts. Through your champion reaction, Flash of Grandeur, the effect is only going to last a round, so there is absolutely no save. This is just a guaranteed dazzle on all enemies who are within your aura, and that's really, really nice. A fantastic way to buff up the protection of all of your allies by making it much harder for the opponent to target you, assuming they rely on sight as their precise sense, of course. I really, really like the new Grandeur cause, actually. It's got those defensive abilities still instead of being more offensive focused, and Dazzled is one of my favorite conditions to apply. You never really think it's going to have as big of an impact as it does, but when you see it used repeatedly, it really does stack up to be really, really impactful. So I think they knocked it out of the park with the Grandeur cause, and it might be one of the first characters I build once I start building characters with the remastered content. So I'm really excited to see what the feats have. Now, as we go into our feats, I do want to leave a couple disclaimers. First and foremost, Champion has, 500,000 feats from the Knights of Lastwall book, as well as a couple other books here and there. I will not be bringing these feats up. For this and for other classes, will be operating under the assumption that these options that appear in other publications, such as the Lost Omen series and what appears within the back of different campaign books, are going to still be available options. The only time I will not treat them as still options is if they have a prerequisite that has been removed from how the class functions, like if a feat no longer has tenets of good or if a feat requires tenets of good or tenets of evil. I am operating under the assumption that it is no longer a valid choice for taking if you are using the remastered champion, at least. A lot of the feats that required a specific cause still require a specific cause to be used, and I do kind of find it mildly entertaining that the unholy cause feats are still listed as uncommon, and there are definitely fewer of those available than there are the wholly focused and just general options. I don't think that's an issue, but I would like to see in the future, with more content at least, give us some more unholy options to give those champions something a bit more to play with, especially now that they don't have to directly be evil, they just have to be sided on the unholy side of things. I think we're going to start seeing more characters who are unholy in nature, but are still able to run with a regular party of adventurers, so I'd like to see them get some more options down the line. But let's jump into our feats, starting with first level, and starting off with a bang, Brilliant Flash. The first feat in the book, it's a brand new one. It is for grandeur specific causes, and it makes any enemy who is affected by your champion's reaction off guard while it is affected by revealing light. That is just phenomenal. Make the enemy dazzled and off guard when they hit one of your allies. I think that is a phenomenal choice, and not only then helps to protect your ally, but is also going to help with the aspect of assisting your team in fighting these enemies off. It's not just off guard to you, it's off guard to everyone. So your whole party gets to take the pound of flesh against this enemy. Defensive Advance is a new feat. It allows you to raise a shield and stride as two actions, but if you end your movement within melee reach of an enemy, you can make a strike as a free action. I think this is a nice solid option. If you are planning to raise a shield and move anyways, this will allow you to get that free strike in and do something else, either a second strike or some other action you would like to do with your final action of the turn. I think that's really nice. Faithful Steed. This is the replacement of the previous Steed ally. Grants you a young animal companion with the mount ability typically. It also, notably, sanctifies your animal companion if you yourself are sanctified. I think that's pretty fun. Now I can have a holy horse, and no one can stop me. Desperate Prayer, it's been brought in line with most other focus point regaining abilities. If the point is not spent by the end of your turn when you use this free action, it is lost. Previously, it just allowed you to regain a focus point with no caveat that it would be gone if you didn't use it. So this is a minor nerf, but it does make it equivalent to all other focus point regaining feats in the game. I don't think there's any issue with that. It's just solid and fine. If you think you're going to be using your focus points a lot, go ahead and take it. If not, you've got some other options. Ranged Reprisal has been renamed to Nimble Reprisal, and there is what appears to be almost mild nerf to it, if the wording is understood properly, where it effectively states that you can't use a ranged strike for your ranged reprisal if the enemy is within your reach. I'm a little confused by that. I don't necessarily think that was necessary, and if I understand that, then while you can use your ranged strike if both your ally and enemy are in your aura, but the enemy is within your melee reach, then tough luck. Even though there's no penalties in Pathfinder anymore for using a ranged weapon in melee, save if they have the volley trait, this seems to prevent that. And I don't think this was necessary. I would probably ignore it, and for all I know, it was intended not to work this way, and it was just weird wording. But I would probably recommend not following through if that is correct. I think it's very silly to say you can make a ranged reactive strike, but you'll be penalized for the enemy being too close to you, especially with how small your aura is and wanting to get the enemy within that 15 feet of you. If they're limited to being 10 to 15 feet away from you, that makes it your aura objectively worse having this. Past that, the Splinter Faith feat seems to have been removed, and Unimpeded Step has gotten a mild buff to provide its benefit to all of your allies once you get your Exalted reaction. I think this is a nice little change. Doesn't do much, but it is a buff nonetheless, and I approve of it. Starting with second level, the Oath feats. These have been entirely removed from the game, and I, for one, think that's just fine. I don't really have an issue with them being gone. I never particularly enjoyed them. I don't enjoy abilities that give specific bonuses against specific creature types or in very specific situations. I really don't like having to answer early on in a campaign when someone's building their character if they're going to be fighting a majority of one type of creature or in a majority type of terrain, because it can be information I don't necessarily want to give, whether that's me setting up a surprise or I simply don't know at that point, because depending on what my players will do, the situation may change. If I was planning for them to fight multiple dragons in the campaign, but they go in a completely different direction and they make friends with the dragons, well, then they might not fight them as much, and if someone had taken Dragon Slayer Oath, they're going to feel pigeonholed into having to fight them to use their ability. So I never really liked those sorts of feats in the first place. I never want players to otherwise take a feat they are not really going to get any or just very limited use out of in the campaign. So I'm just fine with these oaths being gone from the game. I don't think it hurts your characters at all, and you've got so many other fantastic options that I don't think anyone's really going to be missing the oaths. Additionally, conceited mindset has been removed. Who cared? Uh, Conceited mindset was one of those feats that had a tenets of evil restriction. It gave you a bonus to saves against mental effects and made you crit succeed if you normally succeeded. While this was a nice feat, I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing that it's gone. Again, you have so many other fantastic feat options that I don't really think you're going to be hurting losing that, especially because previously, again, Tenets of Evil champions weren't really common. They didn't really show up in a lot of campaigns, maybe Bloodlords in similar campaigns, especially, but other than that, you didn't really see them, so I don't think many people are going to miss this being gone. Divine Health has been adjusted. Previously, it was a fourth level feat. It has been lowered to a second level feat and given a buff. The +2 status bonus to saves against poison and disease you get, as well as now a flat check to recover from persistent poison. This is really nice, but the added benefit is that all allies who are in your aura gain this benefit as a +1 as well. I really, really like this. You get a crit success when you succeed on these sorts of effects. But I really like the addition that your health, your body is so strong due to the divine energy that is imparted to your aura as well, and inherently makes all of your allies healthier and hardier simply by them being close to you. I think that's really cool and really fun. And actually, since we're on a feat that affects your aura, this just reminded me a slight change to your aura that is pretty neat for more flavor reasons is the fact that whenever a individual who worships the same deity as you steps into your aura, they automatically recognize that you are a champion of that deity. That's a neat little flavor thing. It can lead to some interesting potential situations and also potentially a great way to prove your character's identity. Um, Maybe your character wants to keep their holy symbol hidden, but if you don't suppress your aura at certain times, you might end up giving away the game if your party is trying to stealth or disguise them at certain points. So, really neat sort of ability, little flavor there, and might end up having some really cool roleplay options with it. So, GMs, that's definitely something I would recommend you keep an eye out for and recognize that that can be made use of in your stories. Fourth level feats. What fun! This is where things get real neat. Your auras of courage and despair have been retained, and instead of requiring tenets of good or evil, they require a holy or unholy sanctification instead. I think that's just fine. It makes sense. Both of them are great abilities, and uh, yeah, I've got no real thoughts on the matter aside from just fine. Happy to see him still around. Because what I care more about is the changes to cruelty and mercy. Fantastic adjustments. They aren't spell shapes anymore, so you don't have to use them as an action before then casting Touch of Corruption, now Touch of the Void, or Lay on Hands. Instead, these are passive effects that allow you to cast those focus spells using two actions instead of one for their added benefits. These are really nice. Aside from that mild change, cruelty is the same, but mercy has been completely reworked. Instead of having 3.5 million different feats that you can take as you level up, so you can put every single feat you have into making mercy apply to all conditions in the game. When you choose mercy now, you choose one of three different types of mercy. And each of these types has a very specific series of conditions you can counter. So you can really take a look at what conditions have we been coming up against the most in the campaign thus far, and what do I want to focus on taking down. This feat also has the special ability that you can take Mercy multiple times, gaining one of these different types each time you take the feat. So if you really do still want to focus in on getting all the Mercy buffs and being able to counteract every condition in the game, you can still do that, but your choices are now a little bit different, And I just like that change. I think it's really neat. It gives you some options. Um, and I think you kind of get to hone in on what you're focused. Are you focused on protecting the physical body of your allies or their souls and other options? I think that's just neat. Nice idea. No complaints with how they've changed Mercy, and I think I actually have a higher likelihood of picking it up now. But on top of Mercy and Cruelty, there is a third focus spell we have now, and because of that, we get a new feat, Security, which buffs your Shields of the Spirit if you take it. It makes it so you can cast Shields of the Spirit with 2 actions, just like the rest, and if you do so, it gives the benefits to one of your allies, even if they no longer are in your aura or your shield isn't raised. So they can get that +1 to AC and damage an enemy who attacks them, even if they are no longer, or they move away from you, or during a time when your shield isn't raised for whatever reason. I think that's neat. I don't necessarily think it's fantastic per se. Personally, I imagine were I to build this, I would probably, if I take Shields of the Spirit, I might not really take Security unless I don't really have other things I super want to take. But the option it has is really nice, and being able to fully protect others at a different level is nice. And the reason I might not take that is because of the first 6th level feat we're going to get into, Expand Aura. Oh boy, Expand Aura. What a change you went through. Previously, it was a 16th level feat that you activated as a single action, I believe, and it would choose one of your auras and double its range until the start of your next turn. Absolutely awful feat. If anyone ever took it, I'm so sorry for you. I do not know how you worked that into your action economy. On the flip side, with what they've done with Expand Aura now, it almost feels like an auto include, unless you're building for something very specific that would cause you to take a different 6th level feat. It feels like Expand Aura is going to be the default choice for people. It is a single action to increase your aura to 30 feet until the start of your next turn, which is nice. And that aura, keep in mind, not just affects any aura feats you've taken, but your champion reaction as well. So changing that to 30 feet is going to end up catching a lot more enemies and afford your allies more movement while staying within it. What makes this feat really crazy is that at 10th level, the duration lasts for a minute, and at 16th level, it becomes indefinite until you turn it off if you want to. So going from a previous 16th level feat that doubled an aura's range, one single aura's range for one turn, is now able to be taken lower, and by the time it gets up to 16th level, it is a permanent range. And your aura also includes your champion reaction now, on top of any other aura feats you take. I think this is a fantastic choice, but I do struggle a little bit with feeling like it is sort of a default choice. And as I've said, if it is something that feels like a default or required choice in a build, a part of me feels like it should just be part of the base kit instead. I think this is one of those things that's perhaps a little too good to be in the base kit, and I wouldn't be upset if they nerfed it slightly. But I also don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Champions are cool, give them fun abilities. Who am I to care? You know what? I really should stop saying nerf things. Go crazy. Make everything really good. Let's see what happens. I think this is fun. So I really don't have complaints about it. I'm just trying to force myself to complain about it. I'm happy with what they've done with Expand Aura. Moving past that, Loyal Warhorse has Faithful Steed as a prerequisite now, simply because you no longer are getting a horse from your steed ally. Of course, you are having to take the first level feat instead. Nothing wrong with that. It is pretty much the exact same otherwise, and that's going to be the same for the majority of the mount feats. There will be a change that we'll get into later. Starting with 6th level is going to be where we see that the Litany feats have also been removed from the game. These were a series of feats at a bunch of levels that gave you additional focus spells and just about all of them, if I recall properly, did require the tenets of good and evil. All of these have been entirely removed from the game, and if I'm being honest, I'm slightly sad about that. I personally never really used them or never really saw them get used, but they did give you additional option and additional focus based off of what you were already doing. So I think losing that versatility is a little bit of a shame. I don't really think it would have taken too much effort if they turned these into holy or unholy based focus spells and still gave the champion access to them. But perhaps instead of this, it could be really nice if at some point in the future they were to take those old litany feats, change them up, and turn that into a archetype with a specific dedication, like a holy warrior dedication that isn't quite a champion and focuses on these sorts of litanies or hymns or some other neat concept behind them. I think they can do something fun with them in the future, but for now they are gone, and I am a bit disappointed to see them go, to be sure. But past that, Corrupted Shield is also gone. Oh no. And going through everything they got rid of with the remaster, it's a bit of a challenge on occasion. Corrupted Shield previously was an evil tenet focus that required your Divine Shield ally, and it made it that when you used Shield ally to block a melee or unarmed or weapon strike from an adjacent creature, it would automatically deal some void damage back to the target. This is now gone. It's a little bit of a shame. I do wish there was still a sort of ability that allowed it that when the enemies choose to attack you, you can punish them in return. I know there are a few causes that do this, but it would have been nice, I think, if we were to, say, get a feat or two that allowed you to take the main effect of a cause, either dealing additional damage to an enemy or giving resistance to an ally, and had feats that were minor versions of those. So when you took one, you could still get a pseudo effect of the other potentially. And we do sort of have that with Shield Warden still being around. Being able to, at the very least, shield block for your allies sort of falls into that effect, and we don't really have any abilities now that let you punish enemies for directly attacking you, and I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity. Smite Evil and Smite Good have been technically removed. They have been combined into just Smite as a 6th level feat, which is pretty nice. It does have slightly weaker damage until you get Master Proficiency with your weapons. So between 6th and I believe 11th level, you're going to have, might actually be 13th level, you are going to have like 1 damage lower than Smite previously gave, but this damage is brought back up if you are sanctified and the target has the opposing sanctification. So nothing really in particular. It does have the concentrate trait now, also doesn't require a specific ally, and instead of it just dealing additional spirit damage, it is a status bonus to your damage, which is definitely something to keep in mind. That is, you could consider it a slight nerf sense. Instead of it just being extra damage, it is it will not stack with any other status bonuses to damage you may get, which is a bit of a shame if I'm being entirely honest. I do imagine we'll still see some people taking it for the attack and damage focused champions, but losing out on that and having that extra little restriction might make it a bit less preferred as a choice. So we'll have to see what people do with it, but I'd say it is not nearly as strong as it was previously at this point. Moving on to 8th level feats. One of the big things, we are getting greater mercy and greater security, as well as greater cruelty here. Greater cruelty is basically the same as cruelty previously was. Greater mercy is giving additional effects to those choices when you took mercy earlier, which is pretty nice, letting you buff those specific options instead of, again, giving new choices, really lets you take your options. And if you have taken Mercy multiple times, taking Greater Mercy gives you the buff to all of them. Solid addition, solid change to the Mercy lineup. I really like this, that it is now kind of condensed into the feats, but you can take the feat multiple times to get the full breadth of the ability if you wanted to. Greater Security gives your ally the same circumstance bonus to your AC from when your shield is raised. I don't really have an issue with this. I do think this is pretty nice and does make it worth taking regular security earlier, because your ally will gain your circumstance bonus to AC as well as the status bonus to AC provided, whether your shield is raised or not. So they're theoretically, when your shield is raised, getting a +3 to their AC, even if they're not in your aura, assuming they don't have any other benefits. And that's pretty nice. I do think that makes it really solid. And even though I'm not hugely into regular security, I do think regular security would be worth it if you are planning on taking simply greater security later on. So I think that's just really, really solid. Some feats that have been removed at 8th level: Sacrifice Armor, Sense Good, and Sense Evil have all been removed. I think it's a bit of a shame we lost Sense Good and Sense Evil. I know we had to lose them because we no longer have good and evil alignments, but I do think we could have gotten a fun feat that sort of combined the spirit of the two and perhaps gave us a sense or a brief ability that would allow us to sense sanctified creatures or even locations near us. I think that would make a whole lot of sense for a champion to have that sort of feat, and the fact that we don't is a bit of a shame and a missed opportunity again. I know I'm just spouting a lot of things. We've already got so much fantastic with champion, but these are those sort of small things that I would have really loved to see added on as options as well. Your second ally has, of course, been changed its name to Second Blessing, just to adjust the fact that it is not a divine ally anymore, but a blessing that you are gaining. Moving on to 10th level, Radiant Blade Spirit has been replaced by Radiant Armament. It no longer allows you the choice of a flaming rune with your Blessed Blade, but it does give you the choices of Astral and Brilliant instead. Additionally, it gives you a really nice bonus that is a 10-minute exploration activity. You can change the rune on your weapon. So instead of having to wait for daily prep to change what you've got, you can just do it over the course of 10 minutes. I think that is a fantastic buff. I love when things give you the ability to switch out what you've got going on in the middle of the day and adapt to situations. It really rewards planning and thinking about what is going to come next. Makes things like augury and other divination focused spells kind of fun, because you can look at, oh, you know, it looks like we might be fighting incorporeal creatures coming up. Well, I want to shift to a ghost touch rune on my weapon then, and then after we deal with that, I might shift to something else. I think that's really nice. I love, love, love having the ability to adjust your tactics flexibly depending on the situation. So I'm really happy with this. I think that is a fantastic choice if you are going with the Blessed Armament choice for your blessing. Resilient Touch and the Litanies have, of course, still been removed at this point, and Shield of Reckoning has been given a buff. Shield of Reckoning being the feat that allows you to shield block and use your champion's reaction to give the ally damage resistance at the same time. Really fantastic ability. Shield of Reckoning has a special note on it now that if you have an additional reaction to shield block or an additional reaction to use your champion's reaction, you can use Shield of Reckoning in those situations. So, for example, in a 1-20 campaign I've run previously, our champion, who was a paladin at the time, since this campaign ended before the remaster really was coming out, they had an extra reaction for shield block, an extra reaction for retributive strike, and their regular reaction. This would now allow them to Shield of Reckoning with all 3 of those reactions if he had so wished to. And that is terrifying. As a GM, champions are already a nuisance to take down, especially when they're doing the damage resistance focus. So being able to combine their shields on top of that, oh boy, The only thing I can be happy about is the shields are going to break quicker. But I do think that's a fantastic little buff. Uh, I don't necessarily think it was necessary, but I do like it since it makes that ability just even better. Really solid choice. Spectral Advance is a new feat we get here, and this is for the Blessed Swiftness choice of blessing. This grants you a brand new devotion spell called Spectral Advance. This is a 1 or 2 action spell, your choice. You stride to an adjacent space to an enemy, or if you use 2 actions to cast the spell, you can stride twice. This movement can be done by your mount, does not trigger reactions, and ignores difficult terrain. It also provides you or your mount, whoever is doing the movement, resistance to all damage equal to your level during the movement. I think this is a neat ability. I don't necessarily think it's too nice or amazing. I do like that it is a focus spell though, so it does increase your focus pool, especially now that we don't have the litanies anymore. The number of focus spells a champion gets is practically none, and outside of other ways of getting them, their focus pool for things like Touch of the Void, Security, or not Security, Shield of the Spirit, and Lay on Hands are going to be pretty limited. So I do think that is something to keep note of. While this isn't necessarily amazing, I would mostly be using it for the ability to ignore difficult terrain and ignore damaging terrain, or at least resist damaging terrain, especially for some of those higher level spells that make terrain very painful to move through. I mostly think that this is solid to keep in mind as a choice because it is also giving you another focus point. But that does it mostly for our changes to 10th level. We're halfway done with the feats. Let's move on to 12th level. Aura of Faith has been adjusted. This requires holy or unholy sanctification now and grants that trait to all of your allies while they are within your aura. I think that's kind of neat. It's mostly flavorful, changes any sanctified spells your allies are casting, but I also think that's pretty cool and could lend itself to you GMs out there, giving your party the ability to pass uncontested in some really neat areas. If you've got an unholy champion in the party, this could be really, really nice for sort of disguising the party if they are in the Abyss or Hell or Abaddon, where other creatures might be able to tell if they're unholy, sort of treating all of your party as unholy might assist them in disguising themselves. So I think that's a cool little ability, and if there's one thing I'm not entirely sure how it would work, I probably need to do a bit more research. If your ally already has a sanctification and they stand in your aura, which provides the opposite sanctification, what occurs? I don't know yet. I think it's probably unlikely you're going to have party members with opposite sanctifications in the party, but that is something I really should have looked into before this. Oops. I'll look into it further later. Get back to you guys there. How about that? The Pale Horse feat has been removed. This makes sense. It's not really necessary, especially since your steed, if you've been following these steed routes, already has the holy or unholy sanctifications. You don't need an extra feat to make your mount an evil mount alongside you. Liberating Stride and Lasting Doubt have both been removed, while Gruesome Strike and Blade of Justice have been adjusted. I do think it's a bit sad that Liberating Stride and Lasting Doubt have been removed. The number of feats that require a specific cause is very limited. They are few and far between, and I think taking some of the ones that existed and just getting rid of them, there wasn't really a huge reason to. It does simplify things. If there's one thing I appreciate with champion feats, it is that there are fewer options now. If you take a look at the list pre-master that is there, quite frankly, it is a daunting amount of feats at every level, especially for a new player to take a look at. This is definitely simplifying everything, but I do think a number of them have been removed without necessarily needing to be removed. I think there are a lot of feats that could have either remained as they are or just taken small adjustments to still fit with everything. So That's a bit of a shame. But the changes to Gruesome Strike and Blade of Justice are made based off of whether your reaction, which camp it falls into, whether it is a reaction that grants resistance to an ally or deals extra damage to your enemies with your strikes. Blessed Strike is a one-action attack with the Flourish trait. It deals an extra weapon damage die and also applies weakness equal to half your level to all strikes made by you and your allies until the start of your next turn to an enemy. This is a very slight nerf to how Blessed Blade previously worked. I believe it did 2 extra weapon damage dice previously, but I still think this is a really solid choice, dealing some extra damage and then applying weakness to the enemy for not just you, but for all of your allies is really solid and could stack up to some hefty extra damage depending on the situation. Gruesome Strike otherwise operates the exact same as Pre-Mastered, doubles the extra damage taken and forces a Fortitude save on the enemy versus them being drained 1. So, pretty much the same. I do like the few adjustments that there are. I do like that it is, instead of requiring one specific cause, or whether you follow the tenets of good or evil, whether you are sanctified or not, these are just based solely off of what camp your reaction falls into. Is it one that helps resist damage, or one that deals more damage? I like that. I think it's a solid choice. Well done. I think these are solid options to take no matter what your build is. At 14th level, a couple of the auras have been completely removed. The other ones have been adjusted, mainly just by their names being changed, some small things here and there being changed. The new litanies are still gone. Sacrifice armor was removed earlier, thus Greater Interpose is also gone at this point. The 3 newly named auras are Aura of Determination, Aura of Life, and Aura of Righteousness. Determination gives a +1 status bonus to saves against mental, morph, and polymorph effects in your aura. Life grants a resistance 5 to void damage and a +1 status bonus to saves against void effects. And Righteousness has a requirement that you be holy and grants your aura resistance 5 to unholy spells, strikes, and other effects. And if a teleportation effect or spell would teleport an unholy creature out of your aura attempts to counteract it. I'm not sure how I feel about that. That feels a little weird to me, just being entirely honest. I do sort of wish there was an aura that requires you to be unholy for one, just to balance out. There are 2 that don't require any sanctification, 1 that requires a holy sanctification. I would like to see one that requires an unholy sanctification, just to keep things balanced. I don't like feeling that the unholy champions out there have fewer options than the holy ones are getting. I think that sets a bad precedent in Galarian and should be adjusted. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The Aura of Righteousness feels like it should be switched. It prevents teleportation out of your aura, but if the entire idea is protecting you and your people from unholy, it feels more like it should try to counteract any creature that attempts to teleport into your aura, forcing them to sort of stop at the edge and keep them away from your allies, as opposed to trying to keep them there when you're not there. The entire idea feels like the aura is repulsing what is unholy, so instead to try and cage something, and it just feels weird. And it feels like it should be switched. I also think it would be objectively better if it was switched, since if an enemy teleports and it counteracts it, it's going to bring them closer, and then they'll still have to use an action to get in, or it's not quite there, not in melee reach to make a strike if that was its last actions of the turn, and gives the rest of your party and yourself a chance to wail on it before it can do anything else. I suppose it's the same argument if it tries to teleport out, but I find a lot of times, at least, when I run enemies, they aren't necessarily trying to teleport away when they're in such close proximity to enemies. Maybe they'll step and then translocate away, so I suppose this does keep them there. But more often than not, I find myself using teleportation effects to get enemies in close to my players. So I think this would just be a bit more frequent. Or just have it prevent both. Why not? Go wild. Make it prevent teleportation in and out. That would make sense. Honestly, you could lower the resistance to damage granted and add that effect in and have it apply to all situations. I think that would be fun. I don't think that would have any issue. Nice ability. Anyway, that's that rant. 16th level. This is that change to mount feats. Auspicious Mount is now effectively gaining the effects of the 20th level feats Fiendish and Celestial Mounts. Increases the max HP of your mount, but instead of increasing it all at once like the 20th level feats does, it does now give it progressively some hit points at 16th, 18th, and 20th level. And it also provides a specific weakness, gives it the ability to fly. It really is just a specialization that adds all of the Auspicious Mount abilities as well as the Celestial Mount abilities. I think it's pretty nice if you're going down the mount route. This is a fantastic capstone, while also then still giving you the option of a 20th level feat for something else. Good choice, game. I approve. Instrument of Slaughter looks like it has a typo in it. It does mention your Blessed Armament, but it doesn't have Blessed Armament as a prerequisite. Previously, Instrument of Slaughter, when it was based off of your Blade Ally, had Blade Ally as a prerequisite, and thus it made sense that it mentioned it. Instrument of Slaughter doesn't have Blessed Armament as a prerequisite, so it feels really strange that it mentions your Blessed Armament. I assume it is just a mistake on the writer's department where they copied and pasted the text over, changed it to match the new terminology. There's more than one situation where I've noticed that while going through the entirety of Player Core 2. So I would like to see just an errata show up at some point, or Paizo to update the PDF if this is in fact incorrect. And if it isn't, what a strange wording choice. Why talk about their Blessed Armament? Because they might have gone with like Blessed Swiftness. So really, really strange. I imagine it's a typo. Hope they change it. And if it isn't, please clarify, Paizo. What do you mean? Why do I suddenly have a Blessed Armament if I'm using Blessed Swiftness or Blessed Shield? Please help. Past that, what were we looking at? 16th level? Yeah, 16th level. Instrument of Zeal. It does just have the funniest prerequisite I ever did see. I'm not telling you here, go look it up when the book comes out. It's like 4 lines long, and it's really funny. It all makes sense. Nothing's wrong with the feat. The feat's quite good. I just wanted to mention the prerequisite because it makes me laugh when I look at it. It's half the ability length. 18th level. Celestial and Fiendish forms are gone. Just poof. Removed from the game. You do not get to take a divine form anymore. And I'm a bit sad by that. I really loved the flavor of them, effectively becoming a divine servitor of your deity. And similar to some of the early feats, I don't think there would have been an issue with making a holy and unholy form that you could take instead if you had sanctification. Now that these are just gone, I mean, hells, it could have been celestial and fiendish form still anyway, requiring holy and unholy sanctification. There wasn't really a solid reason to just see them vanish, and I think that's a shame for the fun and flavor and options they provided. Ultimate Mercy now has a slight buff on top of returning a creature to life. Once they have been returned to life, it then immediately applies the other benefits of Lay on Hands on them. Previously, in the pre-master, Ultimate Mercy just returned the target to life. Now, they're going to get a bit of a heal and any of the other Mercy effects, if necessary, as well. Solid buff, makes it even better, and not just resurrecting someone to 1 hit point is always quite nice. There is also a new feat at 18th level that I think was kind of given to us as the replacement of Celestial and Fiendish forms. Swift Retribution, it is called. This feat makes you quickened on your next turn after a champion's reaction is triggered. This extra action can be used to stride or strike only the enemy that triggered your champion's reaction. So if you're taking to stride, or any move action, it doesn't just specify stride, it says move towards. You can move only towards the creature that triggered the reaction, or you can use that quickened action just to strike the creature that triggered your reaction. I think this is nice. Champion never really had a feat that made them quicken, like so many other classes do at high level, and I think this one is fine. It does have some solid restrictions on it. It has to be after a champion's reaction is triggered, and it can only be used to apply towards that enemy who triggered the reaction. I think that all makes sense, and is all around a solid feat. Good creation on that one, Paizo. I'll partially forgive you for the Celestial and Fiendish forms with that. Not fully, partially. 20th level, the adjusted Divine Ally feats based off of the new blessings. Armament Paragon grants animated, greater fearsome, grievous, keen, and greater vitalizing rune options, as well as greater astral and greater brilliant if you have radiant armament, which notably is not a prerequisite for this feat, which I find kind of neat. The 10-minute replacement time from Radiant Armament does become a 1-action change time here, regardless of if you have Radiant Armament or not. So it does kind of make that part of Radiant Armament useless. I can see if games are at 20 for a period of time, it's probably a solid choice to then retrain out of Radiant Armament into something else, unless you really care about those Astral and Brilliant rune options. And don't want to just apply those to your weapon normally. So I'm a little saddened by that. I think it would have been completely fine, and I wouldn't even have this thought if they just made Radiant Armament a prerequisite for this feat. But specifically because it is not, it is effectively rendering a benefit of a previous feat that you could have taken useless. And I don't agree with that divine philosophy, there we go. That's champion talk right there. Shield Paragon keeps your shield permanently raised, repairs it next daily prep if destroyed. Notably, during the time your shield is gone being repaired by a divine servitor, over a single minute you can infuse a different shield to gain the benefits of your shield blessing until you get your original shield back the next day. This is pretty nice. It doesn't have a limit on that. You can go through as many shields as you want in one day and not have to worry about it making them maximum reinforcing rune the entire time. That's pretty nice. That's a nice little adjustment to it. And Swift Paragon is our new feat for Blessed Swiftness. This makes all allies' movement not trigger reactions if their movement began whilst within your aura. That's a fantastic buff. Just your allies never have to worry about moving and triggering reactions. And if they've got big move, they can move through the threat range of other enemies outside of your aura so long as they started their movement in your aura. That's really, really solid benefits. And is going to make the party's tactical options bloom even further, especially at that max level when a lot of enemies are going to have reactive strike or other reactions that trigger on movement now. So I think that's really solid. Also, it makes you permanently quickened, which can only be done to step, stride, or fly, or you can have your animal companion be mounted or quickened if you're mounted on it. I think that's a nice little solid choice. Does conflict slightly with Swift Retribution, but at the same time, Swift Retribution and Swift Paragon will work really, really nice if you're mounted, because you can use the quickened condition from Swift Paragon on your mount and the quickened condition from Swift Retribution on yourself and get all the actions. So, great choice there. Should open up some fun options. All in all, with Champion, I'm pretty happy. It was buffed slightly in a lot of areas. It got a brand new cause that I'm really excited to try out. and it got the adjustments it really needed to fit with the world of Galarian in the context of the remaster now. I am a little, more than a little disappointed, though, in just how many feats seem to have been axed entirely and left on the cutting room floor that didn't really need to. A couple feats that required the tenets of good or evil, and seemed to me at least like they would have been pretty easy to just require holy or unholy sanctification, which they did do for some other feats, so it's not like there isn't a precedent for that. Additionally, again, entirely getting rid of the litanies, I am a bit saddened about that, even if I never really saw them. I think there were some cool things about them, and I do hope to see them return at some point, either as new options for the champion or even as a dedication focused on them. So, that about wraps it up for this video, though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you've listened all the way this far, why? What are you doing? Go play a game. Come play one of my games, even. I've got slots open at the moment. That'll probably remain true at all times. If not, you guys are great, and you've come and joined my games. But yeah, that about does it. As with the other videos, please, 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 if you have your own thoughts and opinions, drop them down in the comments. I would love to open up a dialogue and have a conversation with you guys about your thoughts on the new champion and what's going on with it. But with that being said, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. And that means tomorrow is going to be reaching the halfway mark, as I will be doing my deep dive into the investigator class. And for a little spoiler alert about that, I'm very excited. So, thank you all so much once more. That's probably the third time I said that in the last 60 seconds. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one.